guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. So yes, I'm doing another soft matte glam today, but this one involves a wing, and I can't do winged liner to save my life, but I found something that really helps me do it. So I'm using this little tool in this tutorial, which I hope you guys will also find might help you if you struggle with winged liner, because I know it is a stressful thing to do. So I've used some of my absolute favorite products in this tutorial, and I've also got a few other little tricks that I've started doing with my makeup. So if you want to see how I created this soft matte glam, then please keep watching. So I'm just going to start off by putting some concealer on my lid. For this I'm using the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer, and this is in the colour Custard. This is a Zoeva concealer blender brush. I'm just going to buff this out. And then, like with all of my eyeshadow bases, I just like to make sure I go right into the corner and all the way up to my eyebrow. Just gonna add a little bit extra to my brow bone. So now I've got a little bit of a concealer base, I'm just gonna lightly dust over the top with any powder, doesn't really matter what one you use, just to set that in place so that it doesn't move. So the base of this eyeshadow look is made up of two bronzers. So I'm going to use the Too Faced Natural Lush bronzer, which is this one, and I'm going to use the brown shade in it. So it's got the highlighter shade, but I'm going to use the brown shade. This is such a nice bronzer because it's very, very natural, so it's quite buildable. And I'm really enjoying using a bronzer as my eyeshadow base at the moment. I think it's because bronzers are sort of less pigmented than a brown eyeshadow, so I feel like you get a much sort of softer base for your glam, which I think is quite nice. So I'm just going to start along the bottom of my lash line and sort of build up. For this I'm using Morphe E28 brush, and I love this one because it's slightly tapered at the end, so it's quite good when you want to bring, like I'm doing here, the eyeshadow slightly up into a bit of a wing. So I like to bring the eyeshadow up towards like the tail end of my eyebrow. And then so from there, I'm just going to take it into my crease and then just take it up to my eyebrow. And then I also just like to add a little bit of definition in this bit here between like the crease on my eye and then my nose. This is just so when I do my nose contour, it sort of all blends together. And so with this bronzer base, you can basically just keep adding and adding until you're happy with the desired kind of depth of colour. So the next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to go in with another bronzer, and for this I'm using the MAC Give Me Sun bronzer. This is a little bit darker, it's a slightly more orange tone, I'd say. So I'm just going to go in and sort of deepen the outer corner, and this I'm using a blank canvas E25 brush. This is just a soft fluffy blending brush, and I'm just going to focus the product on the outer corner. And like I said, I feel like using a bronzer for your eyeshadow base is just slightly softer than maybe using an eyeshadow. I just personally find that I prefer it. It's not quite so heavy. And then because I'm going to add my wing, just make sure that you keep the eyeshadow kind of heading in a wing direction. So just keep blending it up towards the tail end of your eyebrow. So that is the bronzer base done. As you can see, it's really soft, and actually when I can't really be bothered to do much else, I kind of stop here. I'll just put on a pair of strip, like kind of neaten up the edges. I'll put on a pair of strip lashes, and that can be like a really simple glam. If you kind of want to do just that, that's fine. So for the next step, I've just got a bit of concealer on the back of a flat concealer brush. This is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer again, and I'm just going to map out a bit of a crease. So then once I've got the concealer on the middle of my lid, I just like to get my finger and just sort of blend it out, so you've got a bit of a soft ombre. And I'm just going to go in with my blending brush just to neaten up that edge. So we're actually going to do this concealer on the lid twice in this look, just because I'm going to blend two different colours over my lid. So the next colour that I'm going to go in with is this little single pigment. This one is the colour Stone. It's an Anastasia Beverly Hills little pigment, this one. So I'm just going to press that colour over where we put the concealer. I really like these Anastasia eyeshadows because they're very matte. Putting the concealer down for this is more just so that it's got somewhere for it to sort of stick to and it stays a bit better. And then I'm just getting my brush and I'm just sort of blending, make sure that it's all seamless. So the next step for the eyes, I'm going to brighten up the eyeshadow a little bit. So I'm just going to go back in with a bit of concealer, but I'm going to focus most of this on the inner corner. I'm just gonna I'm sort of gonna fake my crease a little bit and just bring the concealer a little bit further over, just so I've got bigger space. This also really helps when you wanna have a slightly brighter inner eye look. Then I'm just gonna use my finger to just pat that and sort of blend it out. So next, I'm gonna go in with one of my favorite things, which is the Bare Minerals Well Rested Powder. This is actually a concealer powder, but it's just so amazing. I've said this before, I think. It's just such an amazing brightening concealer. I'm gonna just press that over where we put the concealer. And then I've just got the brush that had the Too Faced bronzer on, and I'm just sort of going over the edges just to buff them out slightly, just so it's all blended. So that is the eyeshadow base done. Bringing the concealer right over is giving me a really nice inner corner highlight. It also helps to kind of like make your nose look a little bit more snatched. So we're now gonna move on to eyeliner. So winged eyeliner gives me anxiety, much like it gives anyone anxiety. It stresses me out, and I wish I didn't have to do it, but I love the way that it looks when I've got it on. So I feel like if there's anything that can help me do it, I'm open to it. So I've been using recently the Stamp and Drag liner. This is amazing. So it's the ones that have got a liner stamp at one end, and then it's got a felt tip pen at the other. It's kind of foolproof. You do have to go in and sort of like neaten it up and tidy it up a little bit, but I do feel like this is the best thing I've found to do my liner. So I'm just literally gonna lightly stamp. And I think the trick to this liner is to like really lightly stamp. So as you can see, that is my little liner stamp done. Pretty easy, no stress there. And then using the other side, which is the felt tip, I'm gonna fill the liner in. I feel like I can't talk for this, so I'm gonna pay attention. So I basically just keep going in and kind of elongating the liner line to wherever I want it to be. And I also am living at the moment for like a half liner, so I probably take the line to about here. So I'm gonna sharpen up this wing now. So I'm gonna go along with some makeup wipes to remove the excess eyeshadow and also get some concealer to make it a really nice defined wing. I feel like with wing liner, I never get it 100% right, but I'm always sort of like semi-happy with it. And then I go in to try and make it look better, and then I ruin it. So whenever I get it to a point where I'm like okay with it, I leave it, because I know if I go in any more, I'm gonna ruin it. But yeah, I don't know, there's something about that stamp liner which, like, don't get me wrong, I don't love the stamp on its own. Like, it needs a lot of tweaking once you got it on, but there's something about just having that little stamp on the edge that you can really use as a guide, and I've just found it so much easier to put my liner on having had that stamp there. So I've kneaded up along the edge of my eyeliner. So now when I put my concealer on, I've got a nice sort of like line that I can follow. And so now that's done, I'm gonna have to try and do the other eye. Always the worst part, trying to get them to match. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to set my eyebrows with my 24-hour brow setter before I put anything on them. I've started doing this recently. I feel like I get a really nice bushy brow by doing this first. I don't know why, it just kind of works. I really like it. I feel like the product sits on really nicely over the top. Yeah, it's just a bit weird, but it works really well. So I'm gonna set these. I like to do this after my eyeshadow, just so that there's no sort of eyeshadow powder in my eyebrows. Because obviously if you set them first, when you do your eyeshadow, you might get some powder kind of going in there. So while I wait for them to dry, I'll put things like my eyelashes on, you know, things like that, but I will wait until they're completely dry before I go onto my foundation. So the lashes for this look that I'm gonna use are the Lily lashes in Milan, but I wanted to show you guys something that I've been doing to my lashes recently, and I really, really like the way they look. So I've kept them like this, so, oh my God, everything's going crazy over here. So I've kept them like this so that you guys can see. So this side I haven't cut yet, and this other side I have, just so you guys can see basically how much I sort of take off each lash. I pretty much cut them almost in half, because I like my lashes at the moment to sit almost where the edge of my liner is, and only kind of cover like half of my eye. Personal preference, I think they look really good there. It might be because my natural lashes are darkest to sort of like the middle of my eye, and then they sort of get a lot shorter and they're a lot fairer towards the corner of my eye. So naturally my lashes are sort of only on like half of my eye. I know that sounds really bizarre. So I found that recently I really like to do that almost the same with my fake lashes. So then once I've got the lash on, I like to go in with these mini tweezers. These are actually something I got from the Makeup by Ariel masterclass that I went along to. And I just use these to squeeze the lash onto my natural lashes so that it's nice and seamless. This is perfect as well for when you are doing this with lashes where you're cutting them a bit shorter, just to make sure that you can get that end down so it's really secure. Okay, so there we have it. Lashes are on, the eyes are over. It's always the most stressful part of makeup. I always feel like I can breathe when I get to the end of the eyes. Okay, face, my favorite part. Starting with the Dr. Jar Color Correcting Treatment. As always, this one is my fave. Don't need to say anything else about it because I've gone on about it too many times. So I'm just gonna apply this, and this is gonna be my primer. For foundation today, I'm going to use one of my favourites. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation, and this is in 330W. So I'm just going to apply this to my face. I'm going to use a brush. This is the Spectrum B01 brush. This foundation I feel like is perfect for a soft glam because it's a good coverage, but it's not too heavy. It makes it quite a good foundation to sort of wear during the day. This is a glam that sort of I'd maybe wear for like a bougie lunch, or like if I had sort of like an event during the day. So I do like a slightly lighter foundation, whereas like the Hourglass one, which I also love, that's definitely a lot heavier, so it's better for sort of like an evening vibe. So once I put most of it on with my brush, I'm just gonna go in with a damp beauty blender and just kind of push it into my skin. Next up, I'm going to contour. I'm using the LA Girl Pro Conceal again here. This is in Beautiful Bronze. So to buff that out, I'm going to use a blank canvas F32 brush. This is sort of like a flat contour. And with this one, I like to sort of face the brush sort of flat towards my face and like push it upwards like that. I always feel like once I put my forehead contour on, I would think the makeup looks like it's coming together. I don't know why, I always get to this step and then I'm like, okay, yeah, it looks good now. So every time I put my contour on, I then just go over everything with my beauty blender, just so it's all nice and blended. And then so lastly for contour, I'm just gonna do some nose contour. So I'm just using whatever's on the back of my hand and then this little flat brush. And this is a Morphe M432. And then I'm just gonna buff that out. So I'll finish completely buffing my nose once I've got my concealer on. So I'm going in here with some of that same concealer I use on my eyelids. So this is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in Custard, and I'm just gonna put some underneath my eyes. And so as you can see here, I'm bringing the concealer all the way up to the edge of the wing. So just put a little bit of the concealer along my nose, also in the middle of my forehead, and also on my chin. I've also noticed such a difference in the way my concealer looks since applying it with a brush rather than going straight in with the wand that's sort of in the concealer itself. I don't know why, I feel like maybe this sort of presses it into the skin a bit more so that when you come to blend it's just sort of already halfway there. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I just feel like it does look a lot better. So then seeing as I want a real sort of bright eye look, I'm using this also, this is another NARS concealer. So this is a soft matte complete concealer and this is in Vanilla. It's quite bright, this one. So I'm just gonna use some of this towards the corner of my eye. This is really good to add to any places that you want a bit more brightness. To blend that in, I'm just gonna go in with a mini beauty blender. So when I buff the concealer into my nose, I like to sort of alternate between the brush that I used to buff out the contour, just to kind of keep going in with both and then going back in with the beauty blender to blend that concealer in, just so there's no sort of like harsh lines between the nose contour and the concealer. Now comes my favorite part, which is making my skin matte. I'm gonna start off with the Huda Beauty powder here. This is the color Cupcake. This is the one that I'm gonna use under my eyes to set my face. I'm honestly so obsessed with this powder now. I've been using it all the time. I literally love it to set underneath my eyes. It's so good. Also, if you've never used a powder with a pink undertone to set under your eyes, I would definitely recommend trying it, because it really does help to get that real bright under eye look. And then I also just use this powder to set my T-zone. By now you guys probably know exactly what's coming next. It is the Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder. I'm going to use a big fluffy brush for this, and this is the Spectrum A01 brush. I still feel like I'm undecided as to whether I prefer setting my Laura Mercier powder with a brush or the powder puff, but I feel like with the powder puff I was going through so much product. I don't know, I just feel like I use a bit less when I use the brush to set my face. So now my skin is looking really matte. I'm going to move on to some bronzer. To start off with, I'm going to use the Laura Mercier setting powder. This is a medium deep. This is just to go over my contour. I absolutely love using this medium deep colour now. It's such a nice way to warm your face up, but it's not too intense like a bronzer. So it's a good sort of level to start with, and then you can go in with your bronzer and really, really warm it up. I just absolutely love this. Plus, it goes without saying, I love how matte it makes my skin, because obviously it is a powder, it's not a bronzer, so it's got no shine to it whatsoever. It is just completely matte. Just before I go in with some bronzer, I'm just going to put some powder under my eyes to bake. For this, I'm going to use this new sponge I've been using. It's a Dose of Colours. It's a really weird shape. It's got like a flat side and a really pointy top. I just really like the top of it to get in under my eyes, because it's really pointed. You can really get in there, you know? Because I don't want the bronze to be too harsh, I'm going to use the Natural Lust bronzer. This is the Too Faced one that we use for our eyes. This really is such a good bronzer if you're looking for something that's a little bit more natural. For a soft glam look, I really like it to be a little bit more about the blush. And I think if you go in with a bronzer that's too heavy, you kind of lose the blush look a little bit. So it's quite nice to use a slightly softer bronzer. Blush, I'm going to use the Benefit Cosmetics Cheek Leader palette, and I'm going to use Dandelion at the end here. As I said, I want this to be really about the blush, so don't be afraid to add possibly a little bit more than maybe you would normally. When I'm doing a look like this, I actually don't like to do too much to my under eyes. I really like keeping it just basically on the top. So for my under eyes, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of the MAC Give Me Some bronzer. And I like to focus it on the outer corner. Just something like that, so it's not too heavy, and I'm just going to put a little bit of mascara on as well. So before I set my face and put my mascara on, I'm just going to go in and fill my eyebrows in. Now, as they have been set before, this bit, I don't know why, but I just feel like because my eyebrows are hard, the product just kind of goes on really nicely. And I feel like by putting the gel on first, you end up with a much more kind of feathery looked brow. So when I fill my brows in afterwards, I basically am just going to go in and fill in where it's a bit more sparse. So if I just come in a little bit closer, as you can see, I feel like by putting the gel on first, it kind of gives the brow hairs a bit more definition. It makes it look a lot more sort of like, I don't know, there's just something about it that I feel like it fills my brow out a bit better. And then my lip combo for today's lip is still the Morphe Sweet Tea Liner and the Morphe Bare All Lipstick. I just can't get enough of this combo. I just feel like it works so well for all of my glams because I'm such a nude lip lover. Lastly, to finish this off, I'm going to use some mascara. This is the Spectrum Dark Matter Mascara. It's so good for bottom lashes. I actually just started using it recently and I'm obsessed with it. So there we go guys, that is my soft glam tutorial. I really hope that you have enjoyed watching this one. Definitely used pretty much all of my favourite makeup products. Matte skin, blusher, a little bit of a wing. It's just my absolute fave. So I really hope that you guys have enjoyed watching and that you found this useful. I will link everything below that I have mentioned in this video, but thank you so much for watching and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.